Your 401k can be an incredibly valuable tool to help you save for retirement. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. There are some really bad plans out there. Now, whether your plan has high fees, a bad fund lineup to choose from, or it's just really hard to work with, it can make your plan a whole lot less useful than it should be. So what do you do about it? The answer is really going to depend on a lot of different factors, which we'll talk about in a minute, but there's one thing that you shouldn't do. You should not stop saving. You might not be putting your money into your 401k plan, but you should keep saving somewhere. You can save into your individual IRA, or if you've hit your contribution limit, you might even be saving into your taxable account. But you need to keep putting that money away for retirement. While you're working, your savings rate is by far the most important number in your retirement plan. If you're saving enough, then everything else is details. Important details, but still details. So keep saving. One other thing to call out, if you are somehow in a bad plan that also offers a match for your contributions, which actually happens more than you might expect, you really want to try and get that match. First off, it's part of your compensation, so don't pass up that money unless you really need to. But also from an investment perspective, that money is basically free returns. A 1-to-1 match is an immediate 100% return. A 50% match is an immediate 50% return. Your plan needs to be really bad to counteract that. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about some of the things that you can do to deal with a bad 401k plan. The first thing you'll want to look into is whether you can just get your money out. In 401k parlance, this is called an in-service rollover. In other words, you can roll your money out of your 401k plan and into an IRA while you still continue working there. This isn't offered on all plans and can often mean all sorts of restrictions or penalties because the plan provider may not want you to take your money out. The plan provider may have a conflict of interest here if their fees are based on the amount of money in the plan or the number of participants in the plan. So they may not exactly be incentivized to help you get your money out of the plan. But let's say that you have to keep some or all of your money in the plan. What then? Well, at this point, the goal is to just make the best of a bad situation. And what this means will depend on both what the plan looks like, but also what assets you have outside of your 401k plan. It's a very different situation if all of your money is in your 401k compared to if this is just a small piece of your total investments. Before we get to that piece though, one thing that you should take a look into is whether your plan has a self-directed brokerage option. This is pretty much what it sounds like. You can basically go and pick what funds you want to use, whether they're in your plan's lineup or not. Also, if you're working with an advisor, they may be able to manage a self-directed window on your behalf. The specifics on these windows can vary greatly from plan to plan, to put it mildly. So you'll need to look at exactly what your plan allows. And definitely watch out for any fees or transaction costs that come into play with this option. They can add up fast and really eat up any benefits pretty darn quickly. So let's talk fund selection. As a general rule, the simpler a fund is, the less opportunity that fund has to be bad. It's relatively hard to screw up an S&P 500 index fund, though not impossible. If you have a big enough expense ratio on anything, it will start looking pretty darn rough. But as a general rule, simpler funds, and especially index funds, are likely to be your best approach. Let's start with a situation where you have all or at least the bulk of your investments in this plan. Even in a bad plan, you're going to want to start with your overall asset allocation. What sort of risk and return profile are you looking for? And as always, we've got an article on this in the description down below. As you're looking at the fund lineup though, focus on the funds that fit within your asset allocation. also recognize what you have available. Often, this will end up focusing on a simpler allocation. Say a US market or large cap index, an international market fund, and a short-term bond fund. Whatever you have available, you want to be sure that you maintain a well-diversified portfolio, or at least as well-diversified as is possible. Just stay focused on the basics. If your 401k represents a smaller part of your overall investment portfolio, you have some more flexibility here. Whatever you do in your 401k, you can build around it with the rest of your portfolio. The important thing to remember here is that you want to look at your investments, as well as your overall retirement plan, from a holistic perspective. You don't have a bunch of different accounts. You have one portfolio that just happens to be broken into different accounts. They all come together to create your overall allocation. After all, you own all of them. In practice, you'll often end up choosing roughly about the same funds as the folks who have all of their money in the 401k, the market type funds. These funds are generally going to be pretty straightforward, so they're often the bright spots in the lineup. But at the same time, look at the other funds and see if there are any good ones in the mix there. And make sure that they also fit into your overall asset allocation. Once you find the funds that work best for you, or are least bad for you, I should say, you can then figure out how to reposition the rest of your portfolio to accommodate them. But just like always, getting the right overall risk exposure is much more important than the specific funds that you use. Don't adjust your asset allocation to your funds. Adjust your funds to your asset allocation. One other thing that I want to call out here is that you should pay attention to your asset location if at all possible. Your asset location is basically making sure that you hold your funds in the accounts that are most advantageous. And we've got an article on this in the description if you really want to dig in. But the upshot is that you want to hold your bonds in your tax-deferred accounts, so your traditional 401k, and asset classes with higher expected returns and higher taxes in your tax-exempt accounts, like your Roth 401k. If you have a traditional 401k and there's a decent bond fund that you have access to, might make a lot of sense to buy as much of that fund as you need to fill out your overall bond allocation. If you're using a Roth 401k, you probably want to focus on stocks or REITs as they have higher expected returns, and REITs tend to have a pretty hefty tax bill as well on them. But exactly what you choose will really come down to the specifics of your plan and, well, the funds you have access to. You should also try and figure out who you can talk to about improving your 401k plan, and nicely make the case for improving that plan, including why you think the plan could use some work. A lot of people who are in charge of them don't really understand them and don't really know what's possible. Nicely calling their attention to the issue can kick things in motion, though keep in mind that 401k plans are, for pretty darn good reasons, really bureaucratic, and things tend to move a lot more slowly than you'll probably want them to. Dealing with a bad 401k plan is not an easy situation, but there are a lot of things that you can do to make it less bad. And it's also important to remember that the most important thing you can do to prepare for retirement while you're working is to keep saving. Now, that said, you do want to make sure that your savings are working for you as well as possible. And if you want to find out more about how to do that, both inside and outside of your 401k, to help you reach the retirement that you want, you should take a look at our free ebook, The 9 Principles of Intelligent Investors. You can download it for free by going to retirementresearcher.com/principles. It's here on the screen. And we've also got it linked down in the description below. This will help you take this framework for how the markets work and understand what to do with that in a practical sense, and what that means for your investment portfolio. If this was helpful, Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can see what we're up to. If you have any questions on this or any other questions that you'd like me to address, just drop them in the comments below. You can also check us out on the web at retirementresearcher.com and make sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter to keep up to date with everything that we're doing.